trade, we reviewed the progress our teams have made towards the Trans-Pacific Partnership. I know that the politics around trade can be hard in both our countries, but I know that Prime Minister Abe, like me, is deeply committed to getting this done.
This is one of those deals where you got Obama and Ryan, people who ran against the guy, we completely see it the same way on this.
TPP is good for American businesses and American workers.
So we need to get in and write the standards so that we are writing the rule book for the global economy for the 21st century.
Well, Paul Ryan in February discussing his support for this trade deal. President Obama last Tuesday meeting with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe discussing this Trans-Pacific Partnership, a trade deal with Asian countries. A great place to start our roundtable since there is so much strange stuff going on here. Host of the Tim Constantine Capitol Hill Show, columnist also at Washington Times, Tim Constantine's been here with us for Last Block. Also joining us now, David Goodfriend, president of Goodfriend Government Affairs, also here with us as well, and Miranda for the roundtable. Guys, let's get started. We're talking about this trade deal. The saying goes, politics makes strange bedfellows, and this is the case here with this particular...
Your face kind of said it all there.
Yeah. We're trying to figure out what's going on. Republican Senator Jeff Sessions, along with people like Elizabeth Warren and Harry Reid, are sounding the alarm on this trade pact. Sessions specifically says supporting this deal would give President Obama way too much presidential authority. Sessions telling Breitbart, quote, the living agreement position would allow countries to be added and terms changed without any congressional approval here. David, there are a lot of questions about the sketchy provisions of this bill. Do you support it? Do you think Democrats should?
Well, I can understand why a lot of Democrats would be very concerned about it. For one thing, none of them have really been able to discuss the text of the agreement as it stands today back home, and that's awfully hard to ask an elected official to vote on something without being able to talk about it with constituencies back home. There's a bigger theme here, which is on the left you have labor unions, you have progressives like Elizabeth Warren who are concerned about more jobs going overseas and wages being depressed with foreign workers being used as labor. On the right, you have what you just described as sort of suspicion of Obama. Why would we give him more authority? They're very different reasons for opposition, but they come together in a way we haven't seen left and right united in a long, long time. I would say that the only other place I see this kind of confluence between left and right is on civil liberties, the Patriot Act, and NSA surveillance. They come together there too. And again, it's strange bedfellows, but it seems to be giving the president and Republican leadership in Congress a lot of headache.
It's not the skepticism of President Obama so much, I think, that Sessions is concerned about. It's more or less the what's this going to do to immigration in this country, right?
Well, and it's interesting. It's a mixed bag. You started out by saying, it's strange bedfellows here, but even within my own head, I used to own factories overseas, and I worked in international trade. So I understand the need, and I understand how we need to have cooperative agreements. But at the same time, I see the Democrats asking for a $12 minimum wage price.
Right.
And when you do that, and at the same time are allowing this, it does have a legitimate concern. And what we've seen in the past, whether that was with South Korea or elsewhere, is trade agreements have had the visas as part of them when we negotiate agreements with folks. So my concern here is not just the Democrat Barack Obama, not just is this particular president, but should any president have the sole authority to enter into those type agreements?
All right, fair enough.
All right, let's move to our next topic. Following requests for transparency, the Justice Department is reviewing its use of stingrays, a device used to track cell phones and share identifying information. Technology is becoming even more persona. Will this review finally bring the age-old discussion to action? David, let's go to you.
Well, I started to talk about this with a prior topic, and that is civil liberties. You know, government surveillance sounds great until you disagree with the government in power, and then you realize you've handed the state tremendous invasive authority to look at your personal life. We're constantly balancing between security and privacy. I go to the airport and let them poke and prod me in ways I wouldn't let you because I want to get on that airplane and I'm willing to do it to stay safe. I don't think most Americans are willing to give up total privacy in the name of security. And again, we're seeing conservatives and progressives come together on that very issue. The FBI has a terrible track record of having abused individual Americans' privacy and civil liberties in the name of national security or in the name of police security. And I think this is healthy. I'm glad to see conservatives and I'm glad to see progressives stand up and say, wait a minute, we ought to be thinking about how much privacy we're willing to give up in a free society. That's a healthy debate we ought to have.
We're running out of time, but Tim, I want to get your response to this.
Well, I'm with David on this. I think, you know, we are pitched fear. Oh, we have to do this or something bad could happen. But the truth is the libertarian in me wins out. If you give up all your freedoms to fear, then fear has won. So do you want to do the best you can to protect Americans? Absolutely. But do you do that at the expense of personal liberty? No.
All right. Well, we're going to leave that subject there. More to talk about, though. We're going to talk about some Iowa poll numbers coming up and announcement coming on Cinco de Mayo from Jeb Bush in Espanol.
Feliz Cinco de Mayo para todos.
All right, Jeb Bush reaching out to the Latino community with a happy Cinco de Mayo message there. Is he winning the Hispanic vote? Is he going to even try in Iowa? He might not want to with his new poll numbers. We'll talk about it coming up right after this short commercial break. All right, welcome back. Let's pick it back up with our roundtable. David Goodfriend and Tim Constantine. David's coming to us from Washington, D.C. All right, let's play a little bit more of that clip that Jeb Bush released yesterday in Espanol.
Hola, Jeb Bush. Mi esposa Columba nació en México. Mi familia tiene fuertes lazos con México y yo tengo un gran respeto y cariño por nuestros vecinos.
All right, Jeb Bush posting this video yesterday on Twitter in celebration of Cinco de Mayo. Tim, is Jeb even running for the Republican nomination?
I don't understand. With Common Core, with Amnesty, I don't get where this guy... He was a wonderful governor. I lived here when he was governor. I knew him well when he was governor. Great guy, great governor.
He reached a lot of independence.
But I don't know how he intends to win the Republican nomination with all the positions he has taken.
Well, David, Jeb Bush does have a very conservative record as a governor when it comes to fiscal responsibility. And when he speaks to this country's Latino community in Spanish, does that make you nervous as someone who supports Democratic candidates who have had the majority of those Latino voters support that party?
Well, we all know that Jeb Bush's brother, George W. Bush, secured 40% of the Latino vote in his first presidential race, and that was very impressive. But then in his second race for re-election, he only secured 11%. And I think that's because of the policies that were espoused by the Bush administration. And even though through your eyes it may look like Jeb Bush is shifting to the left or trying to appeal too far to the left, from my vantage point as a Democrat, it seems to me as though he's way to the right of Hillary Clinton on the issue of immigration. And it's that issue, of course, that's going to drive significant numbers of Latinos in key swing states like Florida, Nevada, Colorado, the Mountain West. That, I think, still poses a real problem for him. He can say this, the translation of what he just said is, hi, I'm Jeb Bush. My wife is from Mexico. I have relatives in Mexico. My family has strong ties to Mexico. He can say that all day long, but I think the Latino voter is going to compare who is treating my community better in this issue of immigration. It's going to go to Hillary Clinton every time.
No, I think it could be a potentially very successful move for him. He's got the evangelical vote split between Ben Carson, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz. We could see Rick Santorum in the race.
And you brought up Ted Cruz, so Ted Cruz also did an ad in Spanish as well.
There's obviously
you can be conservative and multilingual.
Yes.
How about that?
So would you still, considering his positions, like you mentioned, Common Core and on this immigration, would you still consider Jeb Bush a capital C conservative?
No, I would not. In a word, no, I wouldn't. And I would put a list of 3 or 4 folks ahead of him. And I think when you look at those poll numbers you just put up from Iowa, then he's going to struggle there. I think there's a certain network that he could do well in New Hampshire, but you go to South Carolina, very conservative. I think he would have trouble there. I don't think there's a clear path. And David mentioned George W. Bush in his first election. At this point in the primary process, a year out in the primary process in 1999, George Bush was polling 40% among Republicans. If you look at Jeb Bush, he's polling, depending on the poll, no higher than 15, and in some as low as 7. So he's got a very different road to hoe.
Can I add something?
Yeah, go right ahead. We were going to ask you to.
Well, I mean, there's another metric that I think we should measure here, and that is the dynasty fatigue metric. I mean, Hillary Clinton and Jeb Bush both have dynastic names in politics. We all have to acknowledge that. The polling that I have seen shows it to be a much bigger problem for Jeb Bush than for Hillary Clinton. Now, I confess that's a general public poll sample, not Republican primary voters. It may be that Republican primary voters don't care about it as much, but I doubt it. I think Republican primary voters may very well be more concerned than the general public about a dynasty in politics coming out of the Bush family. And I think independent of the Latino vote and immigration and whether he's conservative enough, that strikes me as a major roadblock for Jeb Bush.
So
to
David,
build on David's point, I think what that does, though, is demonstrate Jeb is the weakest candidate against Hillary Clinton. Because if you have the two dynasties, you take away the argument that you don't want more
okay,
of the
so
same.
who's the strongest?
You could take any of those young guns. I mean, you could make an argument
Dick
for
Morris
Marco
said right
Rubio.
here yesterday on Newsmax TV that he believes that Mike Huckabee is the strongest candidate to run against Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, I don't know that I agree with that, but I think you take one of those generational differences. You know, Marco Rubio's 20 years younger than Jeb, 25 years younger than, more than that, younger than Hillary. Doesn't necessarily have to be him, but I think when you look how Bill Clinton won, one of the ways he won
Comeback hit.
was that new generation, that new, the whole thing about tomorrow.
David, real quickly, who worries you the most? Is it Scott Walker? Is it he's leading in Iowa right now? Huckabee?
I'll tell you who worries me the most is John Kasich. Hasn't even declared yet.
And I've talked about John Kasich a lot, and he's somebody, we talked about climate change a little bit earlier. He said some interesting stuff about that, too. We've got to save that topic for another time.
I thought David was going to say Hillary was the one that worried him the most about beating Hillary.
David might be worried about Hillary's poll numbers in that Wall Street Journal, New York NBC News poll about her trustworthy numbers in the 25% range. Not easy to overcome those. But, gentlemen.
Well, do we have time to talk about that?
We only have 10 seconds, David.
We got to go.
So we'll go ahead and tease for the next time, because I think we can have some more stuff to talk about Hillary in the very near future. Right, Dave?
You got it.
All right.
All right, more to come here.